The next definition is blank jam. And blank jam, the most common scenario that comes to mind when I think of a blank jam is a frame for a door, and it has a rim exit device strike on it, meaning there would be no strike prep generally on a rim exit device. Or the same frame that might have a full mortise continuous hinge on the or in the hardware set. You wouldn't want to choose to use jams that already have preparations for strikes or for hinges, because depending on what the application is, in the case of the strike, you're going to have to add a filler plate. Well, there's additional cost in the filler plate, plus it will be obvious that there was a preparation for a strike there in the jam originally. You could weld that plate to it, then grind and bondo it all smooth. That may work, but it would just be ideal if you had jams that were completely blank. There are times when customers have said to me, you know what, I want a frame prep for hinges and a strike. I'm going to use a rim exit device, but as soon as the inspection is over, I'm going to take off the exit device and put on a regular passage set. So they want that frame, that jam prepped for the strike, because later they'll unscrew the filler plate and put the strike plate in. Why they would do that, I don't know the reasons, but that scenario I just mentioned has actually been said to me multiple times. In the case of the hinge jam, why you might want that blank, a couple of reasons come to mind immediately. If you're going to do a full mortise concealed or a full mortise continuous gear aluminum hinge, when your installer, when the client, the installer, goes to put that door into the frame, he's going to attach the hinge obviously to the door and frame. And if you've taken a jam that is already prepped for hinges and then blanked that out, you do run the risk of the client saying to you, don't do that again, because it's a lot more steel for them to drill through. Not only the plate, the filler will be thicker than 16 gauge steel, even though you'll reinforce it, but you'll have that reinforcement plate in the jam as well that the client would probably need to drill through to get the self-drilling 12-24 flat undercut head screws attached through and to. The other reason you would want to use a blank jam is that when you are supplying this opening with a full mortise continuous geared aluminum hinge, and you turn that frame over, you'll certainly want to weld in a piece of reinforcement. Well, if you have those 12-inch hinge plates everywhere, that's going to seriously interrupt your ability to seamlessly reinforce for that, so you may want to avoid that condition altogether. Now, in the case of the strike side, if you take a jam that's prepped for a strike and put a filler in it, it's probably going to be okay, but it would be best practice to not prep frames for an opening for hardware that won't be utilized. Now, a blank jam is literally a jam material in whatever jam depth vis-a-vis the throat opening, however you'd like to say that has no hardware at all. Blank jams, again, are typically the strike jam because you're going to use a piece of hardware that doesn't require it, maybe a rim lock. Hinge jams, again, when it's a hinge that is not a templated full mortise half surface style hinge, you're going to reinforce that material for whatever hardware is going to go on there. So if it's a rim exit device strike, you would certainly want to weld into the backside of the soffit reinforcement for that strike. And then the other thing that's nice about that is when you are not using blank jams, you're not piercing through the frame at all, so that particulate of the wall could creep in through those preparations. So it would be the cleanest way to go about this. And if you're going to use jams in an application where you really should have blank jams, I would just explain to the client what you're going to use and the reason that you'll use it, timeline, lead time sort of concept, and that you'll either attach fillers and grind, bondo, sand, paint, the whole 9 yards. I would think just so that they understand that, what you're doing, it would probably be okay. And again, it's just jam stock. So if you are a hollow metal shop, I would certainly suggest that you keep blank jams, probably in 7/0, 5 3/4 for that type of hardware. So let's switch to the screen view and let's just take a closer look at the entry in the glossary. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, here's our next definition, blank jam, C-jam. Okay, let's just go to jam. I happen to know it's on page 19. Here it is. Jam The vertical frame member forming the perimeter of a frame. Yeah, true, a jamb is vertical. It's not always called a jamb. If you had basically a jamb that was double-sided, like you would in a sidelight frame, it wouldn't be called a jamb anymore. It'd be called a mullion, is what we would call it. But in a typical three-sided frame, a jamb would be one of the vertical components. It would be a vertical frame component that constitutes a portion of the perimeter of a frame. The header is horizontal. Generally, it could be arched or radiused, but generally it's the horizontal component above the door that you walk under, the header, and would be horizontal. So blank, a jamb without mortised hardware preparation is what they're giving us here. So really appropriate to have blank jamb stock would be the best way to go, that you could then reinforce. Because unless, well, what would be a blank jamb? Well, a cased opening frame would be a blank jamb. And unless the cased opening frame is literally doing nothing other than trimming off the end of a wall so that it could be a pass-through application like we would see in this project here that's very recent for us, something that we're shipping. Here it is, openings 17 and maybe 16 and 17. 17 is here. 16 is here, so 16 and 17. Those were literally just cased opening frames. They are areas that people will just simply walk through. There are no doors, there's no hardware, there's nothing at all that's there. So in an instance like that, there's going to be no reinforcement. However, you could also have a blank jamb, like a cased opening frame, that you would then reinforce if you were putting on some sort of a double-acting, a gravity-controlled double-acting, very light gauge aluminum or thin-walled aluminum self-centering door like you'd see in sometimes restaurants or grocery stores, or a double-acting door like 1 3/4 where you're using literally double-acting spring hinges, once upon a time made by Bomber. You would certainly reinforce that blank jamb for that. So a blank jamb is, by definition, never prepped for hardware, but it will most typically be reinforced for hardware, would be what I would suggest considering. Let's wrap up this video on camera. So the next definition is blast resistant. That's going to be something that I don't have a lot of experience with, but we'll see if we can at least come up with something to act as an amendment to the SDI Glossary's definition entry for blast resistant. Let's move on. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.